At the far edge of the galaxy, floating among the soft blue rings of a gas giant, stood the Galactic Academy of Peace, the greatest learning place ever built by hundreds of alien civilizations. Its halls were made of silver light, and its classrooms floated in quiet harmony, filled with young minds from across the stars. Among those young learners were 3 alien students who were known not for their grades, but for their curiosity. Larai, a tall and bright-eyed Cerithian, had skin that shimmered like water. She was always asking questions that others were too afraid to ask. Varn, a stocky Krull with 4 arms and sharp scales, was known for being careful, though his loyalty to his friends often got him into trouble. And then there was Isha, the quiet one, a telepath from the Rin Collective who often spoke more with her mind than her mouth. It was an ordinary afternoon when their history instructor, Professor Helene, was teaching about the great wars of the galaxy. The walls around them displayed holograms of battles fought long ago, shining ships, heroic captains, and countless sacrifices. But as the images shifted, something strange happened. Every race was mentioned, the Valorians, the Zenth, the Krull, even the quiet Rin, but one species was only briefly shown, and then skipped. Humans, a few students noticed, but only Larai dared to raise her hand. "Professor," she asked, her voice clear, "why are humans never included in the war lessons? I thought they were one of the founders of the Galactic Union." Professor Helene hesitated. His usually calm face grew serious. "Humans are complicated," he said finally. "Their role in galactic conflict is no longer a subject of study. The peace accords of Orion forbid it. But why?" Larai pressed. "Were they destroyed? Or did they stop fighting?" The professor's eyes drifted to the glowing wall and his voice lowered. "Humans were not destroyed, my dear. They were banned." The class went silent. Even Varn, who often found lectures boring, leaned forward. Isha's telepathic mind flickered with curiosity, and Larai's heart raced. Banned? But humans helped build the Union. Why would anyone ban them from war? "That," the professor said softly, "is a question you should not ask." The bell chimed, signaling the end of class. Students gathered their holo tablets and floated out, chatting quietly about other topics, but Larai, Varn, and Isha stayed behind. The word banned echoed in their minds. Why would a species known for kindness, creativity, and cooperation be forbidden from defending the galaxy? Later, in the Academy's garden, a place filled with glowing trees and pools that reflected the stars, the 3 friends met again. Varn folded 2 of his arms and said, "Maybe the professor meant they refused to fight. Humans are soft, right? Maybe they couldn't handle war." Larai shook her head. "No, I read the old exploration logs. Humans were tough. They survived frozen planets, deserts, radiation. They're the reason this academy exists." "Something doesn't make sense," Isha finally spoke, her soft voice almost a whisper. I sensed fear in the professor's thoughts when he said banned, not anger, fear. Varn frowned. "Fear of humans? They're small and fragile. Then why does everyone avoid talking about them?" Larai replied. A strange silence fell between them. The stars above shimmered like silent witnesses. The mystery of the humans had awakened something inside them, a need to know the truth. That night, as the academy lights dimmed and the corridors grew quiet, Larai made a decision. "We're going to find out what really happened," she told her friends. "If the truth is hidden, we'll uncover it," Varn grumbled. "You mean break the rules?" "Yes," Larai said firmly. "We're students of peace, aren't we? Peace can't exist without truth." Isha simply nodded, her glowing eyes reflecting starlight. "The truth hides in the galactic archives, but those are restricted." Varn's forearms crossed again. "Restricted? As in, secured with drones, scanners, and energy locks?" Larai smiled. "Exactly," Varn groaned. "I knew it. Every time you smile like that, I end up in trouble." Still, he agreed. He always did, because deep down, Varn's curiosity burned as brightly as Larai's. So the plan began. Over the next few days, they studied the archive's layout, using their research passes to map the lower levels. The archives were said to contain records of every war, treaty, and secret the Union had ever known. Access was strictly forbidden to junior students, especially the parts labeled Terran records. On the 4th night, the 3 met again. Dressed in plain cloaks to hide their identities, they moved quietly through the sleeping academy. The hallways glowed faintly blue, their footsteps echoing softly against the metallic floors. Isha led the way, her mind gently touching the security sensors and whispering them to sleep. "They won't see us," she murmured. "But hurry. I can't hold them for long." Varn used his strength to pry open a maintenance hatch and Larai slid inside first. They climbed down through narrow passages following the faint hum of the archive's power core. When they reached the entrance, a shimmering force field blocked their way. On the other side, endless rows of data crystals stretched like stars in a night sky. Larai's heart pounded. "That's it," she whispered. "The truth is in there." Varn worked quickly on the control panel, his fingers moving like lightning. Sparks danced. The field flickered, then vanished. They stepped inside. The air was cool and silent. The walls pulsed with blue light, and thousands of years of galactic history surrounded them. Yet even among so much information, Larai's eyes were drawn to a single door at the far end. It was dark, marked only with one glowing word: Terran. She took a slow breath. "This is it." Varn's voice trembled slightly. "You sure we want to do this?" Isha closed her eyes. "It's already begun. The truth is calling us." And with that, the door opened with a deep metallic hum. Beyond it lay a chamber filled with golden light, and the first glimpse of secrets that would change how they saw humanity forever. The heavy metal door slid open with a slow hiss, releasing a faint mist that drifted across the glowing floor. Larai, Varn, and Isha stepped inside cautiously. The room was much larger than they expected. It was circular, its walls covered with floating crystals and old holographic projectors. The air hummed quietly, as if the room itself remembered what it held. In the center stood a pedestal of silver light. 3 data crystals hovered above it, pulsing softly in rhythm: red, blue, and white. A single word glowed on the platform: Terran War Records, classified. Varn's scales flickered with nervous color. "We shouldn't be here," he muttered. "This is top security level. If we're caught, they'll expel us for sure." Larai didn't answer. Her wide eyes were fixed on the crystals. "Do you see it?" "No one has touched these for decades." Isha moved closer, her delicate fingers reaching out. She felt the data inside, thousands of stored memories and files sealed and untouched. "They were locked for a reason," she whispered. Something inside frightened the council enough to hide it. Larai activated the blue crystal. A beam of light projected into the air, forming an old recording. At first, the image was hazy, filled with static. Then it cleared when revealing a vast battlefield in space. Hundreds of ships filled the darkness, trading bursts of energy across the void. Varn's jaw dropped. That's the Orion conflict, but this isn't how it's shown in the history lessons. In class, the Orion War had always been described as a tragedy of misunderstanding between the Union and the Dravok Empire, resolved peacefully through negotiation. But the hologram showed a different truth. It showed war in its rawest form: smoke, fire, and ships burning like falling stars. And in the middle of it all were the humans. Their ships were smaller, older and less advanced than the alien ones, yet they fought with a strange, fierce coordination. They didn't retreat even when surrounded. One ship exploded. Another took its place immediately, covering the escape routes of others. It was not chaos, it was purpose. Larai whispered, "They're outnumbered by hundreds, but they keep fighting." The 3 friends watched in silence. On the hologram, a human commander barked orders with calm focus while the rest of his crew carried them out, their faces tired but determined. The image zoomed in on their expressions. They were not angry or desperate. They were focused, disciplined, and fearless. Then the scene changed. The battle ended with terrible losses on both sides, but the humans held their ground. The camera panned across their damaged ships, many barely holding together, yet the crews cheered quietly. Not because they had won, but because they had survived. Varn swallowed hard. That doesn't look like weakness. They fought like machines. No, Larai corrected softly. Not machines. They fought like they cared about something more than winning. Isha closed her eyes, sensing the emotion hidden within the recording. Grief, courage, unity. They were fighting for each other, she said quietly. Larai turned to the next crystal and touched it. The red one. Instantly, the room was filled with new images. Reports, council meetings, messages from alien commanders during the same war. The voices overlapped, panicked and tense. The humans refused to retreat. They kept fighting long after our orders told them to stand down. They turned the enemy's attack back on them, with unimaginable losses. As the recordings played, it became clear that the other species were frightened, not of the Dravok enemies, but of the humans themselves. The report spoke of battles where humans fought alone for days, even when entire fleets had fallen. There were stories of small human units defending entire planets by refusing to surrender. Then came a message from a Krull general, broadcast across the Union fleet. They are fearless to the point of madness. They fight even when they know they'll die. We cannot understand them. Varn looked at Lirai uneasily. This doesn't sound like the peaceful humans we've met at the academy. Why would they fight like that? Lirai didn't know how to answer. She just kept watching. The red crystal flickered one last time and the projection changed again. This time the image showed a human ship being cornered by dozens of enemy vessels. But instead of surrendering, it launched its engines straight toward them, glowing bright. Varn's voice shook. They rammed the enemy fleet. The light faded. Silence filled the room. For a long moment, no one spoke. The truth was starting to take shape, and it frightened them. Finally, Lirai stepped toward the last crystal, the white one. If we've come this far, she said quietly, we have to finish it. The moment her hand touched it, the air around them shimmered. The hologram that appeared was not of a battle, but of a meeting. The Galactic Council chamber. Hundreds of leaders from every known species gathered around a circular table. In the center stood several human officers, their uniforms marked by ashen scars. One of the alien ambassadors spoke first. You humans have proven yourselves brave, but your methods are unacceptable. You destroy too much. A tall human admiral stepped forward, his voice calm but filled with something deep. You called us to fight, and we did. But when you wage war, we do not stop halfway. We finish it, because we know what happens when evil survives. The room fell silent in the recording. The aliens looked away, some angry, some frightened. The admiral continued, we don't want war, but when it comes, we fight as if it's the last one we'll ever see. If that terrifies you, maybe it should. The image froze there, the human's face calm yet full of sadness. Then the hologram faded, leaving the room in darkness once more. Varn rubbed the back of his neck. So that's why they were banned. Not because they were weak, because they're too strong, too willing to go further than anyone else. Aisha opened her eyes, her telepathic sense trembling. They carry something inside them, a fire they can't control when pushed too far. Lirai felt a chill run through her. They didn't lose the war, she whispered. The galaxy feared them after it. The three of them stood there for a long moment, surrounded by the soft hum of the archive. The truth they had uncovered was far greater than they expected. The humans hadn't been silenced because they failed. They had been silenced because they succeeded too completely. Finally, Aisha turned toward the exit. We have to go. If anyone finds us here, we'll be in serious trouble. Lirai nodded slowly, her mind still racing. Yes, but now that we know, we can't unsee it. The truth is heavier than I thought. As they slipped back into the dim corridors of the academy, the door sealed behind them with a soft hiss, hiding once again the secret of the humans. But in their hearts, something had changed forever. They came looking for answers. What they found was the beginning of a revelation, one that would make them question everything they'd been taught about peace, power, and the mysterious species called humans. The next morning, the academy looked the same as always, peaceful, bright, and quiet. Students floated through the corridors, laughing, studying, sharing notes for the next exam. But for Lirai, Varn, and Isha, nothing felt normal anymore. They couldn't stop thinking about what they had seen inside the galactic archives. The images of human ships burning through enemy lines, the recordings of desperate commanders calling them unstoppable, and the calm voice of the human admiral. It all haunted their thoughts. Lirai sat silently during her history lecture, staring at the holographic stars on the ceiling. Her teacher was explaining another famous treaty between alien civilizations, a story about peace and cooperation. But every time she heard the word peace, her mind drifted back to the images of human fleets surrounded by chaos. What kind of species could fight like that, then walk away from war forever? After class, she met with Varn and Isha in the garden again. The blue leaves rustled softly as wind flowed through the gravity dome. Varn was restless, his forehands tapping the bench. I didn't sleep, he admitted. I kept seeing that ship, the one that charged into the enemy fleet. Why would they do that? Larai replied. They weren't fighting for glory or conquest. It was something deeper. They didn't want to win. They wanted to protect. Isha nodded slowly, her telepathic senses brushing against their emotions. I felt it too in those recordings. Fear and sadness mixed together. They hate war, yet they fight harder than anyone else. Varn frowned. That's what makes no sense. Most species fight because they're forced to. But humans, they fight by choice. They decide to stand when everyone else runs. Larai sighed, looking up at the sky dome that projected distant galaxies. Maybe that's why the others fear them. They can't understand that kind of strength. Just then a shadow fell across them. It was Professor Helene. His expression was calm, but his eyes said otherwise. You three look troubled, he said softly. Is there something you wish to talk about? Larai froze. For a moment no one spoke. But then Varn blurted out, We went into the archives. Larai turned sharply to him, but it was too late. The professor's face didn't change, but his eyes grew heavier. I see, he said quietly. Then you have seen the truth that most are not ready to know. He motioned for them to follow him to his private study. The room was lined with floating books and old data crystals, far older than the ones used by students. The air felt still, like a place filled with secrets. Do you know why the records were hidden? Helene asked, his tone calm. Larai shook her head. Because people fear humans? He smiled faintly, but there was sadness in it. Yes, but not in the way you think. The galaxy does not fear human weapons. It fears their hearts. Varn tilted his head. Their hearts? You mean emotions? Yes, the professor said. You see, most species in this galaxy evolved to avoid conflict. We learned peace because war nearly destroyed us. But humans, they never forgot what conflict taught them. When they go to war, they carry with them every loss, every tear, every memory of pain. It doesn't make them cruel. It makes them relentless. Isha listened quietly, her telepathic sense brushing against the professor's thoughts. She felt sorrow in him and something else, guilt. You were there, weren't you? She said softly. Helene closed his eyes for a moment. Yes, he admitted. I served as a peace observer during the Orion conflict. I saw the humans fight. I saw what happens when they are pushed too far. He moved to a nearby console and touched it. A holographic image appeared, not of battle this time, but of a planet. It was dark, covered in smoke. This world was called Halor, he said. It belonged to the Dravok Empire. The humans fought to free it after the Dravok enslaved its colonies. The students leaned closer. At first, the humans fought with restraint. They tried to minimize damage, protect civilians, even the enemy's wounded. But when one of their settlements was destroyed, something changed. They stopped following orders. Entire fleets turned their ships toward Halor. What came next? He paused. No one spoke of it again. Varn's voice dropped to a whisper. What did they do? The professor looked away. They called it Operation Iron Sky. They entered the planet's atmosphere silently. Hours later, the Dravok army was gone. Completely gone. The humans didn't destroy the planet. They erased the war itself. Larai felt a chill run through her. That's impossible. No, Helene said, it's very possible, and that is why the Galactic Council made its decision. After the war ended, humanity asked to be banned from all military actions. They feared themselves more than anyone else did. Isha's voice was barely a whisper. They banned themselves? The professor nodded. They understood something the rest of us still struggle to accept, that real peace doesn't come from power, but from knowing when not to use it. For a moment, the room was silent except for the faint hum of the hologram. The students didn't know what to feel, admiration, fear, sadness, or all three at once. Finally, Larai asked, Why didn't you tell us this before? Helene looked at her kindly. Because every new generation deserves the chance to learn peace without fear. The story of the humans reminds us how close we all came to losing everything. But maybe, he added, you were meant to find it. Perhaps it's time this truth is remembered. Carefully. Varn looked down, his voice low. They sound like monsters. And heroes at the same time, Helene smiled faintly. That's exactly what makes them human. When they left his study, the three students walked through the quiet halls without speaking. The lights above cast long shadows and every step echoed softly. Their minds were full of images and not of battles, but of the people behind them. They now understood why humanity had vanished from the stories of war. yet remained at the heart of the Galactic Union. The humans were not forgotten. They had chosen silence, and that silence carried more strength than any weapon ever built. That night, as Larai looked out from her dorm window toward the distant Earth sector, a cluster of faint blue stars, she whispered to herself, "They didn't stop fighting because they were weak. They stopped because they were strong enough to choose peace." She didn't know it then, but this discovery would change her future forever. The truth about humanity was not just a story of war. It was a lesson about what it meant to protect, to endure, and to understand the cost of power. Far below the Academy, the Galactic Archives slept once again. The Terran files were sealed behind their glowing door, but the secret was no longer fully hidden. For the first time in centuries, young minds had seen the truth, and in their hearts the legend of humanity had been reborn. Days passed after their meeting with Professor Helene, but the truth about the humans stayed in Larai's mind like a quiet storm. She found herself thinking about their courage, their choices, and the strange mixture of kindness and fury that seemed to live in them. Everywhere she looked, she saw small reminders of humanity. The old monuments around the Academy, built by human architects, the simple design of the study tablets, the music that sometimes played in the halls. Humans had left their mark on everything, yet most students treated those things as just history. They had no idea what kind of strength lay behind them. One evening, while Larai sat in the library, she found a small plaque beneath a glowing crystal statue. It read, "In memory of those who chose silence, so others could have peace." It didn't even mention humans by name, but Larai knew. She traced the words with her fingers and whispered, "They really did choose silence." Just then, Isha appeared behind her, holding a few data tablets. "I've been reading old council records," she said softly. The professor was right. After the Orion conflict, it was the human ambassadors themselves who proposed the ban on their species joining any military command. Larai looked up. They gave up power by choice? Isha nodded. Completely. They promised to train only in peacekeeping, medicine, and diplomacy. It was part of what became known as the Earth Accords. Varn arrived moments later, carrying food from the dining hall. "I still don't understand it," he said, sitting down. "If they were so strong, why would they stop? Every other species would have used that power to control the galaxy." Larai answered quietly, "Because they knew what that kind of power could do. They didn't want to become the very thing they fought against." The three friends sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the library was calm and filled with soft blue light. Outside the tall glass walls, the stars shimmered like silent witnesses. Then Aisha said, "There's one last file we haven't seen." Varn looked at her sharply. "You mean back in the archives?" She nodded. "The records we saw before were from the Council's view, but there's a folder labeled Human Testimonies. The professor didn't show us that part." Larai felt her heart beat faster. "You know where it is?" "I do," Isha replied. "I traced its signal when we accessed the crystals. It's not far from where we were." Varn groaned quietly. "You want us to sneak back in again, don't you?" Larai smiled faintly. This time not to break rules, to finish the truth. That night, when the academy was silent and the corridors dim, they returned once more to the hidden door. The air felt colder now, heavier, as if the building itself knew they had come back for something even deeper. They entered quietly, the soft hum of the archive welcoming them like an old memory. The room glowed faintly with gold light. Isha guided them to a corner chamber filled with older technology. "Here," she said. "These are personal logs, not official reports." Varn brushed dust off one of the consoles. "How old is this stuff?" "Almost 3 centuries, Aisha said. "From the last human admiral who served before the ban." Larai activated the file. The hologram that appeared showed a man in a dark blue uniform. His face was aged, marked by experience. His eyes carried the quiet strength of someone who had seen too much. The log began with his calm voice. "My name is Admiral Reeve of the United Earth Fleet. If anyone is listening to this beyond my time, Then understand. This is not a record of victory but of understanding. The three students watched closely as he continued. We humans are strange creatures. We love deeply, and that love makes us strong. But it also makes us dangerous when we lose what we love. In war, that love turns into something else, a storm we cannot control. His tone was steady but filled with pain. After Halor, I realized something. We had won the war, but we lost something greater, the part of ourselves that believed we could fight without becoming monsters. So we asked the council to ban us, not because they feared us, but because we feared what we might do if war returned. Lorai's eyes filled with emotion as she listened. We don't fight because we enjoy it, the Admiral said softly. We fight because we cannot stand to see others suffer. But that kind of heart, when pushed too far, can burn everything around it. So we chose peace, even if it meant hiding our strength forever. The hologram ended. Silence followed. Varn spoke first, his voice quiet. He sounded tired, like someone who carried too much weight for too long. Isha nodded. He wasn't proud or angry, just honest. Lorai whispered, they didn't stop because they were forced to. They stopped because they understood themselves. The three friends sat there for a while, letting the message sink in. The glowing crystals around them pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat. Then Varn asked, do you think anyone else should know this? Isha hesitated. If the truth spreads too fast, it could cause fear again. The council kept it hidden for peace. Lorai looked at both of them. But maybe peace built on silence isn't real peace. The galaxy should know what kind of heart humans have, not to fear them, but to learn from them. Before leaving, Lorai copied the message from the Admiral into a small data key. She didn't know what she would do with it yet, but she felt it was too important to stay buried. As they walked out of the archives, the dawn light began to rise over the Academy's domes. Golden rays reflected across the halls, filling the place with warmth. The three friends stopped to watch. Varn folded his arms. You think humans are watching the same sunrise somewhere right now? Lorai smiled faintly. Maybe, and maybe they're hoping we finally understand them. Isha closed her eyes and spoke softly, almost as if she could hear the distant echoes of that human admiral's voice. They taught us that peace isn't the absence of strength. It's knowing when to stop using it. The sun rose higher, and the students walked together in silence. Something in them had changed forever. They no longer saw humans as weak or mysterious. They saw them as beings who carried both the brightest light and the darkest shadow, and had the wisdom to choose which one to follow. That morning, as the Academy filled with the laughter of students beginning a new day, Lorai held the data key close to her heart. She didn't know what the future would bring, but she knew one thing for certain. The story of humanity was not over. It was only waiting to be understood again. Days turned into weeks, but the secret of the humans never left Lorai's thoughts. The data key she carried was small enough to fit in her hand, yet it felt heavier than anything she had ever held. Inside it was the truth. The words of Admiral Reeve, the recordings of the Orion War, and the lesson the galaxy had tried to forget. Lorai often sat alone in the Academy's observation dome at night, staring at the distant blue light of Earth's sun. Sometimes she wondered if the humans still remembered their past as clearly as she now did. Did they ever look at the stars and think of what they had given up? One night, as she watched the stars, Varn joined her. You're still thinking about them, he said. She smiled slightly. I can't stop. The more I learn about them, the more I realize how much we've misunderstood them. Varn sat beside her, resting two of his hands on the rail. You know, before all this, I thought humans were just quiet scholars. I never imagined they carried so much history in their hearts. They carry more than history, Lorai said softly. They carry guilt, compassion, and hope all together. That's what makes them different. Isha arrived soon after, her gentle voice echoing softly. Professor Helene called us. He wants to see us in the council hall. It's important. The three friends exchanged glances. Something serious was about to happen. When they entered the hall, the atmosphere was heavy with silence. The circular chamber glowed with pale white light, and members of the Academy Council stood around the central podium. At the center was Professor Helene, looking both calm and troubled. He gestured toward them. You three have seen what few in this galaxy have seen, and now it seems your curiosity has not gone unnoticed. From the far side of the room, a tall alien in a silver uniform stepped forward, a council officer. We know what you took from the archives, he said, his voice measured but firm. The human records are not meant for students. They were hidden for the safety of all. Varn's throat went dry. We didn't mean to break any rules, he said quickly. We just wanted to understand. Larai stepped forward bravely. We didn't take them to cause harm. We learned something that everyone should know. The humans were not banned because they were dangerous. They were banned because they understood the cost of war. Murmurs filled the chamber. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Helene raised his hand for silence. Let them speak, Larai continued, her voice steady. The galaxy fears what it doesn't understand. Humans fought with strength and courage, yes, but their greatest act of strength was choosing peace. They sacrificed their pride to protect others from themselves. Isn't that something we should honor instead of hide? The council fell quiet. For a moment, even the glowing lights in the hall seemed to dim. Then the officer spoke again, softer this time. You are young, Larai. You speak of peace, but you don't understand what fear can do. Entire civilizations trembled at the sight of human fleets. But that fear came from ignorance, Larai said firmly. If we keep the truth buried, we'll never move forward. The galaxy needs to remember what humanity taught us, not to fear power, but to respect it. Isha stepped forward, her eyes shining. We watched the recordings. We heard Admiral Reeves' words. He wasn't proud of what they did, and he was ashamed. And that shame made him wise. Isn't that what peace truly means? Professor Helene smiled faintly. She is right, he said quietly. The truth of the humans is not a threat. It is a lesson. The council members whispered among themselves. Finally, the officer nodded slowly. Very well. The council will review the records again. Perhaps the galaxy is ready to remember. As the meeting ended, Helene turned to the three students. You've done something brave, he told them. Curiosity can be dangerous, but it can also guide us toward wisdom. What you found may change how generations see humanity. When they stepped outside, the sun was setting over the academy domes, painting the sky in gold and violet. Larai stood for a moment, letting the light warm her face. Do you think they'll really tell the truth? She asked. Varn shrugged. Maybe not right away, but at least it's not hidden anymore. Isha smiled softly. The truth doesn't need to spread fast. It just needs to survive. Over the next few months, quiet changes began to appear across the academy. A new section was added to the Galactic history curriculum, the human legacy. It didn't show battle footage or weapons. Instead, it taught about human acts of kindness, cooperation, and forgiveness after the wars. Students began asking questions again, not about how humans fought, but how they stopped fighting. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy started to understand them not as monsters or heroes, but as people who had faced the same inner battle every civilization must face. One day, while walking through the gardens, Larai saw a group of younger students gathered around a human instructor. He was old, with silver hair and kind eyes. He was teaching them about peace treaties and compassion between species. When he noticed Larai, he smiled gently. She smiled back. For a moment, she wondered if he knew what she and her friends had done, and if perhaps he approved. That night, as the stars filled the sky once more, Larai sat again in the observation dome. Isha and Varn joined her as usual. The three friends watched silently as distant ships glided past the horizon, their trails glowing faintly like soft starlight. Varn spoke first. Do you think the humans will ever fight again? Larai thought for a long moment. Maybe one day if they have no choice. But if that day ever comes, I hope the galaxy remembers why they stopped, so it never reaches that point again. Isha looked at the stars. Sometimes I think peace isn't something you win. It's something you keep choosing again and again. Larai smiled. Exactly. And maybe that's what the humans wanted us to learn. The dome fell silent except for the soft hum of the air around them. The stars above seemed endless, stretching far beyond sight. Somewhere among them, the descendants of those same humans lived quietly, teaching, building, and watching, just as the galaxy watched them now, no longer with fear but with understanding. As the night deepened, Larai felt a calm warmth in her chest. Humanity's story wasn't just a warning or a legend. It was a mirror. showing every species what they were capable of, both the good and the bad, and in that moment she knew the truth would never be forgotten again.